But he had this crow on his shoulder at this time, and the fork snapped, and the crow flew off and was never seen again.
Really?
But I remember that. So here he comes, look, and it just snapped in half, and the crow flew off.
Can I tell you my sort of ultimate bird story?
Yeah.
Well, there's two moments that stand out for me. One was seeing an osprey fish, and we were on this beach in Malawi, and I just couldn't believe it, watching this. You know, it was just insane. Because do you remember when they did the first nesting pair of ospreys?
In
probably in
Scotland?
the 80s in Scotland. Do you remember? And they had a live...
Yeah.
That was TV at the time.
Yeah.
This is obviously also the time when, like, one of the biggest shows was One Man and His Dog. You know, so it was that kind of level, you know, and disco dancing on a Saturday morning.
Treble.
Yeah, exactly.
They were brilliant.
But do you remember they had a live camera of the ospreys and how exciting that was?
Yeah. That was black and white, I think. It must have been
It was incredible.
Yeah. So when did you get interested, Jimmy? Were you very young when you...
Well, when I suppose I'm about the same age as you, Anna.
Yeah.
And so in the 60s, there wasn't any laptops or phones or anything like that. We were just out we lived near the edge of town, so in Darlington, so I used to go out in the fields. So my mates were either playing football or looking at birds, and I was on the bird watching side. A lot of kids at our age then were bird watching, and there was a bloke who lived opposite us, and he used to have crows that used to get the birds from. I don't think he took them out of the nests. I think he just sort of like saved them. But he had crows and magpies and things in his garage.
Yeah, I did.
And he was a mod, and he had a scooter with like Easy Rider forks on the front.
Yeah.
And he used to go up and down our road showing off on his bike with a crow on his shoulder. He had a kestrel as well, but he had this crow on his shoulder at this time, and the fork snapped, and the crow flew off and was never seen again.
Really?
But I remember that. So here he comes, look, and it just snapped in half, and the crow flew off.
Flew off, yeah.
But that was a kind of scene that you would have seen.
Yeah.
Around you know, when I was
around your way.
Yeah.
So an egret, a white egret,
you see a white
over
egret?
there, yeah, on the pond.
Because it likes the pond?
Yeah, only rarely, and a kingfisher.
Do you get...
Only twice.
No,
in 10
I've only
years.
seen two in my life.
Have you? Yeah.
And you remember them. It's like they're like a bolt shot
slash,
from nature's crossbow.
Yeah.
You know,
isn't it?
it's amazing. They're such a show-stopping bird. My favourite.
Yeah.
They're my favourite. I've seen them twice. I remember both times. Once I was fishing for trout on the test, and I was just sort of contemplating why I could see these fish and they weren't biting. I was thinking, and I just sort of sat back, cheesed off. Well, actually, fun enough to have a sandwich.
Yeah.
And suddenly, just boom! Literally about that far above the water, just
totally still, and then just like a rocket into
it really looked
flash
like
of
it.
orange and.
God, man!
It's quite a sight, isn't it? It's something that you always remember. Everybody remembers seeing a kingfisher if they've
ever seen one.
Yeah.
Do you ever choose your jobs because of the local wildlife? Because I've done two not very good films in South Africa, and I remember them principally for the pleasure of the bird watching on my days off.
I've done the same. Probably 3 not very good films. I think it's difficult when you're filming, though. I mean, because a big film crew comes and just colonises an area and makes a lot of noise and a lot of light, and you don't tend to take your binoculars on set with you, do you? Really? I mean, probably a bit impolite, really, for a start.
I wish that was true. I wish that was true, Sean. I'm never without them. I'm never without them.
Yeah.
No, I'm afraid to. Mind you, I mean, on All Creatures Great and Small, it's a fairly small crew, and we're often outside. So you know, if things are flying over, I keep them on my chair. Oh, you're very well behaved. I'm just impressed that you've been with you.
You were in Sheffield, weren't you? Artistic director, cruise in the Sheffield theatres. Yeah.
I was in. In fact, that's sort of how I started birding, because I found the job really difficult, and I was living, you know Sheffield. I was living in the west of the city, quite close to the Derbyshire border, and I a lot of the time I couldn't sleep, so I used to just sort of get up and drive west and start walking. And I'd hear all these birds, none of which I knew by song. And I'd start thinking, I want to identify these things. And so I came out of the job. I don't know what the theatre was like when I was there. I mean, you know, I was looking after the 49 weeks, which wasn't the snooker.
Yeah, yeah.
But I also loved the snooker, so that was fun.
Yeah.
And it sort of kick-started something in me that was... It was really about dealing with the stress of a difficult job and how nice it was just to get out and forget my own human problems for a bit.
Clutter your brain and all this stuff, crap swirling around, isn't there? And it's just nice to get away and be still for a bit.
So obviously growing up gay with a pet hawk, it's quite a concoction. That singular interest can single you out when you're a kid. And then when I found that book, which kind of does tell the story of a troubled kid who finds this incredible situation with this amazing bird and it gives him purpose, that really resonated with me. And I think that's why my parents were so supportive, because it was obviously mad to be like, I'm going to get a bird. But they were really supportive. And then I trained at a falconry centre in Hertfordshire. I trained with this guy who bred Harris hawks, and they were the perfect bird because it's the only truly gregarious bird of prey in the world. They hunt in family groups in the Sonoran Desert, and they have these different roles like wolves of the sky. So some might flush out the prey and then others will jump on it and then they'll eat in a hierarchical format. But because of that evolutionary style of hunting that allowed them to survive in such a difficult habitat, they're the only bird that in a falconry sense will follow you in the trees while you're walking. All other birds, you have to call them down. They don't hop between the branches because they don't see you as a member of their pack, whereas Alto, or Palo Alto was his name, he would hop through the trees. And when I was at school and maybe not having the best time, feeling kind of different from everybody else, being bullied, to be honest, I had this kind of Philip Pullman-esque demon that followed me through the trees, and it gives you such a sense of belonging and pride.
If you love birdwatching, why not join the Flock, our Get Birding members club? Enjoy exclusive content, latest birding news, ad-free episodes, and access to community chat rooms to share tips, spots, and more with birdies around the world. Go to our website, getbird.ing.